With you I'm well pleased. Those are the words that we hear were spoken in some manner that Jesus heard them. And in different gospels, different people hear those words. Sometimes the crowd hears them. Sometimes it's only Jesus. So many years ago, Mark and I and a bunch of kids went into New York City to the Friends Meeting House. And we went to the Quaker school there. It's also a worship center. It's near Union Square. To attend YSOP, the Youth Service Opportunities Project. We've done this many times at our church. The purpose of the visit is to first learn about the realities of homelessness and hunger. At the very beginning, when you get there, some education starts the evening, followed by a preparation of a communal meal held or made by the youth for a group of homeless people who are brought in from different shelters around Manhattan. This is also a place, there are drop-in shelters in the area where they receive their mail, they can take a shower, they can get medical help, they can get in from the elements, any other number of the needs. And so when the clients arrive in these evenings, the students, while the food is cooking that they had just prepared, they sit with the clients and they play games and they chat. And of course, almost always, it's just men. For the first time in life, and perhaps one of the only times, some of our youth got to see firsthand and get a glimpse only, really, of not only the effects of homelessness on a human, but the causes also. Homelessness we can compare to a separation from my and your reality. Our set of expectations of what life should afford us, and in many ways, an entirely new world of meaning, of rules and survival occur in the midst of homelessness than what you and I know as a daily basis. One of the central lessons of this mission experience, though it's central, that is that the homeless are not just a phenomena or an unrelated class of people or statistics. The homeless are humans with gifts and frailties much like us. You are my son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased. Now after this dinner, the homeless return to their drop-in shelter for the night, and the students receive some more education after cleaning up dinner in the cafeteria and then the kitchen. Bedtime's 10 o'clock and lights out usually is 11. And the next day is a simple breakfast of bagels and juice shared by everyone. And then everyone is broken up because there are numerous groups from all over the metro area who come to this each weekend. And they break them up, they mix them up amongst themselves, and they go to the many different boroughs of New York City. And we work at one of the soup kitchens that's in one of those boroughs. Each setting is different, and education and reality is served in heaps to everyone. And then processing and debriefing occurs for about an hour at the end of the day back at the Friends Meeting House. And then all the groups from the different areas of the metro area, they say goodbye, they head for the train, and they go back home in safety. Yes, in safety. You are my son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased. Now, moving off to a very different topic. I wonder if you have ever read the directions that are on the bottle of your shampoo. You have? Okay. When I was a kid, I once read on the tube of Head and Shoulders shampoo, it says, these are the directions: lather, rinse, repeat. And as a kid, I was fascinated that some people would actually wash their hair twice in one shower. Now, forgive me if I insult any of you who have taken the product suggestions seriously. Because I always thought that washing my hair the first time was plenty enough. But in fact, I finally gave in once to lather, rinse, and repeat. Rick's rubbing that dome right there. I was just wanting to see if it might be something important that my parents had not yet told me to do. And even as a kid, I knew immediately after doing so that this was a ploy by Johnson & Johnson to get me to use more shampoo. That was my first and my last practice of lather, rinse, and repeat. In so many ways, though, baptism is like this for God. We are called to wash, and we are told, "You are my son, my daughter, with you I am well pleased. You are beloved." And we are driven again and again then back into the wilderness, as we read in the story today. That process happens again and again. I couldn't help but recall that phrase when I was on that trip, that one particular weekend to the friend's house. We served some 100 people a breakfast, and then another 350 people at this one place. It's called I think it's called the Meatloaf place. I forget what it's called. And they send if you go there and you give them your mail address, they'll send you an appeal every single year in the mail on Christmas time. But it's the Meatloaf place, right? My job in the morning there happened to be crowd control, which is not a good job for that. I was supposed to allow 5 or men or women at a time to approach the table that had the fruit, the juice, the coffee, and some of the pastries that were there. Now, near the end of the line, there was this loud talking, something to prove, mostly frightened gathering of men. And interspersed with the others were a few of them, also were a bunch of other guys who were that way, you know. They all know the rules, and they all love to get around them. And once everyone is served, second helpings are allowed. And as I, the man, go back and ask from the beginning if they would like to have more, along the way, some would just get up and break the line. And still others, when it got close to their turn, would just come up and get their fill, totally ignoring what they know the rules were there. They were there every week. Now, one fellow said no to second helpings, but he decided to come up at a time that too many people were crowding the table. And I suggested that he have a seat for a moment. Then that's when he decided to make a name for himself in front of the crowd. And off to the races he went, telling me I was disrespecting him and who taught me how to act that way, and basically getting in my face. I sputtered a few words and finally came to my senses, and I thanked him for correcting me, and would he like to go on up to the table? Now, I don't think he ever went up to that table, but he got a few more barbs in on me, though. Now, at the time, I realized there was no other way out other than to let this guy have his way. Who was I to stand in the way and to argue over seconds of this free communal meal? He felt he needed it, and he felt that he needed to establish himself in front of the crowd to show that he wasn't someone who was going to be controlled and certainly not denied. And in that instant, I had to admit to myself that I was the one going home that evening to a place of safety. A place that I didn't have to worry about someone stealing my shoes or beating me up or stealing my bedding or sleeping out in the frigid night, freezing to death. You know, I said to him, "You're right. Thank you for correcting me." I wonder, in that exchange, who was in power? Me or the homeless person? Though he made a big deal of it and had his way, I was really the person in power. He knew it. I knew it. The crowd knew it. But as the figure of power, it was my responsibility to react and to understand what was worth standing for. As the person in power, it is my responsibility to understand what is worth standing for. Oh my gosh, I didn't turn off my phone. Thank you. That's the power for you. I find myself relieved then and now that I chose compassion. I could have chose a great many of other things. I could have stood up there with my power and said, "This is the way it's going to be," and, you know. Now, we're very much in the same boat here in Essex. We rail against authority, even good order, and we're frightened by the world and people stealing our stuff. We fear other countries. We puff ourselves up and strike out, and all along, we live our own justice of the streets. And still yet, God is declaring to us all, "You are my child, the beloved. With you I am well pleased." We need to imagine or remember our own baptism. God lifted us out of the water of baptism, descended upon us all, declaring, "You are my child. You are the beloved, and with you I am well pleased." Though we are very similar in our reactions to the world, as the homeless man I spoke of, we, though, are people of status and of power. We can either choose to live our life remembering the words of God and therefore go out as Jesus did to heal and to feed and to act compassionately, or we can ignore God's people and we can victimize the world. It only takes a moment to either escalate the conflict or to compassionately submit, as I imagine God does on a regular basis, from person to person to person. So I pray that each and every one of us, in moments and days and weeks and months that are difficult, and as people of power, that we find ways, even if we think we're right, to compassionately submit. I know it's hard. And sometimes it comes down to our ego, or sometimes it comes down to our reputation, or I don't know, whatever it is. But I think our teacher is telling us that compassion and justice and hope and service is what God and Jesus are teaching. Amen.